Oh. Could we all please rise for the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor of Perth, Mr Basil Zemplis.
Thanks, Michelle, and hello everybody. Welcome to the City of Perth March Agenda Briefing Session. I'm going to formally declare the meeting open at exactly 5 p.m. Can I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we stand, the Whadjuk Noongar people of Western Australia. I pay my respects on behalf of all of us to elders past, present and emerging. It is indeed a pleasure and privilege to be standing on Whadjuk Noongar country. CEO, can I ask you to recite the prayer, please?
Almighty God, under whose providence we hold responsibility for this city, grant us wisdom to understand its present needs, foresight to anticipate its future growth, and grace to serve our fellow citizens with integrity and selfless devotion. And to thee be all blessing and glory forever. Amen.
Thanks, Michelle, and please be seated, everybody. And again, welcome. I'm just going to start, if I may, by checking in with Councillor Gobbett. Councillor Gobbett is isolating at the moment. We're all aware why people in our community are isolating, so there's no need to go into any more than that. That's not to suggest he's got COVID. He may just be isolating because he needs to. Councillor Gobbett, can you hear us okay? You can, okay. And can we just get some communications back from you just to make sure that that's okay, so it doesn't hold us up during the day if it gets...
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yep, just isolating as a precaution.
Beauty, thank you. And that's very clear. Excellent work by the technology team. Thanks, Councillor. Let's carry on then with our attendance. So, firstly, in attendance today, Deputy Lord Mayor Di Bain, Councillor Sandy Angie, Councillor Catherine Leeser, Councillor Clyde Bevan, Councillor Brent Fleeton, Councillor Rebecca Gordon. Welcome back, Rebecca, and congratulations on behalf of all of us. Baby Alexander is in the room, is that right? Just outside the room. Welcome, Alexander. Lovely to have him along. Councillor Liam Gobbett on Teams. In addition, I welcome the Chief Executive Officer, other officers, and any members of the public or media in attendance. There are no members on an approved leave of absence. I'll remind councillors to please submit any applications for leave of absence prior to next week's ordinary council meeting. We'll save the item 4 announcements until then. Item 5.1, public question time. They will be held at the ordinary council meeting next week. Item 5.2 is deputations. CEO, do we have any deputations tonight?
Yes, Lord Mayor, we have received deputations in relation to item 11.1 and 12.1.
Thank you, CEO. Please be reminded, everybody, there is now a 5-minute limit for deputations. That time has changed. And if anyone's been caught unawares by that, please make that clear beforehand. It's our job to make sure that that's been advertised, and we will ensure that that has been. Siobhan, it has? Yeah, great. So 5 minutes. I'm going to invite now George Ashton, representing Element Advisory, and Danielle Davison, representing Westbridge Funds Management, to come forward, who are speaking for the officer's recommendation in 11.1. So would you like to come forward? Are you both speaking? Is this George? Are you both speaking, George, or just you?
I'll speak and Danielle.
Okay, mate. You can take your mask off while you're making the address. If you could just, again, state your name and address, and away you go. Thank you.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. My name's George Ashton.
I'll just get you straight on if we can, mate. Just onto the microphone. Thank you.
My name's George Ashton. I'm a town planning consultant with Element Advisory. 191 St George's Terrace. I'm here today representing the developer for item 11.1, being the proposed amendments to the approved apartment development at 20 Mounts Bay Road. I would like to start by thanking the City's officers for their work in progressing this application to date and confirm our full support for the officers' report and the recommendation for approval. The modifications made to the design are typical of the level of refinement that usually occurs as a result of detailed design, development and market testing that is undertaken following planning approval. In this regard, we consider the proposed amendments to be minor in nature, with no change proposed to the approved land use, dwelling mix, building height or plot ratio. As noted in the officer's report, the existing lemon-scented gum tree at the Mounts Bay Road frontage was intended to be retained in the original design. However, the tree was unfortunately damaged by inappropriate pruning undertaken by a third party in a manner that could not have reasonably been anticipated by the developer. Independent arborist advice that was obtained following the previous planning approval, whilst acknowledging that the tree is alive, has since concluded that the tree will offer little amenity value moving forward, and its retention would be unsafe, as poorly attached regrowth would be likely to fall during inclement weather. We acknowledge this is unfortunate, but it is the reality of the situation, and it is essential that the safety risk associated with the tree is addressed in accordance with the advice received from an independent arborist and the city's own technical experts. The developer is happy to replace the tree, and it has been agreed with the city's officers that a 2,000 litre eucalyptus tree is the appropriate size and species in the circumstances. A larger initial pot size at planting was offered by the developer, but the city's officers have expressed a preference for a smaller tree at planting to ensure that it can better establish itself over time. This replacement tree will form an important part of a revised, high-quality landscaping response that includes additional deep soil area beyond minimum code compliance, with 7 large trees, 3 medium trees and 9 small trees included within the overall landscape design. The additional fire infrastructure has also been located and designed to sit below the height of a standard boundary fence to ensure no adverse bulk and scale impact on surrounding properties. Whilst all other changes we consider to be minor in nature and are contained within the previously approved building envelope. As noted in the officer's report, the relocation of the communal gymnasium will also be subject to the existing requirements of Condition 5 of the approval, which requires the development to be constructed in such a manner that noise levels and noise intrusion are ameliorated to the satisfaction of the city, so as to prevent any adverse impact on adjoining properties. In this regard, the removal of the previously approved outdoor pool in favour of fully enclosed communal facilities at the rear of the building is likely to have a positive impact on noise generation due to the increased opportunities for sound isolation for internal communal facilities. For these reasons, we believe this remains a high quality development, and we would respectfully request Council's approval of this amendment application in accordance with the officer recommendation. As I mentioned earlier, I'm here with representatives from the developer and the architect, and collectively would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, George. Thank you, George. Appreciate that. Stay there if you might, just on the off chance or otherwise that councillors have any questions. Do any of our councillors have any questions in relation to the deputation we've just heard? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. Why did you decide to remove the pool from your design?
With your permission, I might hand that over to the developer.
It's Danielle, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Danielle
Davison from Westbridge Funds Management. We, on the advice of our sales agents, that the demographic that we were targeting would not use the pool, a communal pool, and instead that area would be better suited to a private common space.
Thank you. And has that reduced the overall cost of the project, which was estimated about 12 million this time round? Is that what it was last?
Not with the amount of marble we put in. No, it's difficult to quantify. I mean, you could argue that maybe structurally there might be some savings, but we've seen a 30% increase in construction costs, so any savings got lost a long time ago.
Danielle, you mentioned the demographic there that you're at. What demographic are you after, would you say?
Rich people. No, high net worths, generally from the East Coast, locals downsizing. We've had a lot of interest, which has been surprising, from locals selling perhaps in the Dalkeith and Nedlands area, looking for something that's lower maintenance. Mm-hmm. We've been surprised at how local the interest is compared to offshore, which we may have expected. But obviously this is a premium location, so it's a very narrow demographic, mm-hmm. And we've, I guess, designed it accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Do any further councillors have any questions either for the developer or for George? Yep, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just wondering where you'd normally locate the fire tank on a development like this.
There's a number of locations you could. You try to locate it under the car parking, typically, if you can. A number of factors affect that though. So the pressure flow is one thing, and that's definitely been an issue for us on the site. Very old infrastructure around Crawley. But also because we are on the escarpment there is a lot of limestone, so we've had to raise the fire pumps, and that's why we're having to put it above ground where we are. It is, as George pointed out, still below the fence line, so it is still hidden, but typically I'd say 99% of the developments I've worked on in 25 years, they've been under the basement.
Thank you. Are there any Councillor Fleeton?
Thanks. Have you used Moran and Sons trees before?
No, and will never again. I think I pointed out at the previous approval that we actually weren't the ones that instigated the tree pruning originally. It was the next door neighbours over concerns that they had that the branches overhung their driveway, and it was actually them that sought the quote from Moran and Son. We had every reason, and so should anyone, to trust Moran and Son. They're a registered and qualified tree arborist. Unfortunately, in this instance, there was a lot of heated words over it, but they didn't do what they said they were going to do, and we suffered, I guess, and no one suffered more than the tree.
Anything further from any of the councillors? Okay, with that, George, Danielle, thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for playing your part. We'll move to our next deputation. I'm going to invite Leslie Warren, one of our favourites, from the East Perth Community Group, to come forward, who's speaking for the officer's recommendation for item 12.1. Leslie, welcome. Name and address, please.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Leslie Warren, 7 Bronte Street, East Perth. Lord Mayor, relying on technology here. Deputy Lord Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leslie Warren. I'm speaking today on behalf of the East Perth Community Group. Thank you for the opportunity to make representation to the council with respect to the Events Plan 2022-23, Attachment 12.1a. We welcome the City forward planning for the 22-23 year, a series of events, including the signature event of the Christmas Lights Trail from November to January. We were pleased to be chosen for 2 installations in Claysbrook Cove this year, although in common with West Perth, one of our installations was late in arriving due to shipping delays, not the fault of council. It would be great to see further installations further down Adelaide Terrace if possible, maybe leveraging off the new Adelaide Terrace footbridge lights and the extension of the new light poles down Adelaide Terrace. Having these lights extend into East Perth really helps cement our place as one of the city's neighbourhoods, and it's a great place to live, play and work. We're equally pleased that the city is further preparing to extend the City of Light shows by drone. This, as well as utilising drones for New Year's Eve and Australia Day, offer a far more environmentally sustainable way to light up the city than by fireworks. It is also welcomed by many of the dog-owning residents in the city. Informal feedback we received about the inaugural show included that firstly it was somewhat repetitive, with some of the projections being on a loop. I wasn't actually there, so I'm relying on what people have told me here. Secondly, we've also been told that there were long queues for food, with the food offerings from food vendors. From food vendors on the day. I'm not sure what arrangements were made with local traders. That's okay. As one of the community groups, we are potentially benefiting from the neighbourhood activation component in the plan. This proposes a budget of $90,000 to be spread across the 6 neighbourhoods to support community connection around the Australia Day period. We are pleased that this is included in your calendar. We would, however, like to know if the budget was derived from actual costs in the 21-22 year, as those figures don't actually show in the budget you're presenting to council this period, because those invoices probably haven't come in yet, or wouldn't come in when this month's council meeting was prepared. So the figures don't really tell us the comparison between what was spent this past year and the future year. Also, we're curious as to whether it allows for all of the neighbourhoods or community groups that this year may not have actually taken up the option of an activation. My understanding is not all of the neighbourhood groups did. If we are lucky to gain activations in our precinct as a community group, we're certainly very happy to assist with letterbox drops for such events. We are disappointed to see that although there is a budget for a Christmas nativity on the 17th and 18th of December, again this year there's no budget for Brass on the Grass. I note there's also no budget for sidewalk sounds in West Perth, and neither of these events appear in your event timetable. The Brass on the Grass event has been running in East Perth in some form or another for 10 years, likewise sidewalk sounds. This year the city didn't stage these events, and for East Perth instead, after a $15,000 grant to the East Perth Community Group was approved in mid-November, the community ran the event, I must say, with some angst and a bit of burnout of volunteers. The timeframes and uncertainty were made it a bit tricky, but we did get there in the end. If this is to be the same again this year, we would very much like to know when the grants program for 22-23 will be open, and we're also very preliminary exploring the potential for an arts exhibition in November. But that will also be dependent on the timeframes for grant applications. And I'm asking if it's possible to know in advance or even have the grants program open before July of this year. I know it gets tricky with cross-budget years, but effectively means we lose 3 or 4 months to do anything. And that's tricky because it coincides with the AGM and the crossover period. Finally, it's really good to see a budget for leveraging an activation with a reference to the Optus Stadium and other facilities that stage large sporting and other events. As part of the gateway to the stadium, we're really keen to work with the city and local businesses to help leverage off events with suitable lead times to plan activations. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Does anybody have any questions for Leslie, any of our councillors? Thanks, Leslie. All of those points have been noted. We appreciate you being here. Now, I understand there was a gentleman. Thanks, Leslie. Now, I understand there was a gentleman who had advised of a deputation, but for whatever reason it didn't make it to our notes. Is that correct? Is that gentleman here? Yes. Would you like to step forward, sir, if you could? Your name and address. And am I right in saying it's on item 11.1, the Mounts Bay Road Crawley item?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. Name and address, if you don't mind. 5-minute time limit.
Yeah. Thank you. There's no show without punch.
Oh, we agree.
My name is Peter Oates. I'm the chairman of the Council of Owners at Crawley House, which is located immediately to the north and contiguous with this development site. In May 2021, I made a deputation on a number of points of the DA at 20 Mounts Bay Road, one of which was the state of the tree. I provided photos for councillors to note the savage pruning that had occurred to the tree, and I made the point that the tree may in fact not survive. In response, the developer at the meeting was quick to take the floor and reassure council that the pruning was undertaken by a competent arborist, and they were assured the tree would survive, healthy and fine, I think were the words that were used. Now, this tree is a nuisance to the developers. In its current position, and even with severely trimmed branches, it will impede heavy-duty equipment during demolition and construction, and if it recovers, severely impact the view of the bottom few floors in a southwest direction. Now let's come to today. In advice received from council regarding this meeting, the public were advised that the tree is no longer feasible. Its integrity has been compromised. We are now told the arborist went beyond his remit. This completely contradicts what council heard from the developers at the May 21 meeting at which the DA was approved. The developers are now saying it's a safety hazard. Council saw fit to approve the DA, but subject to conditions, one of which was this lemon-scented tree was to be preserved and protected during the demolition and construction. If this tree does not survive, then condition 16 of the DA is violated. Councillors right throughout the metropolitan area have taken deliberate and specific action on developers and individuals who take unilateral action on matters important to council. trees are considered important. This is a copy of last week's post. There's a photo there with the councillors from the City of Nedlands. They want to develop what do they call a forestry trees in Nedlands. Trees are important. Cottesloe Council took swift and direct action and required a hoarding be directed where a tree once existed against a resident who destroyed a verge tree. This being a clear message to the rest of the community. This contrasts starkly with the developer who wrote to council and labelled all the proposed changes as minor. The question now for council is what course of action will council take to the DA amendments knowing it is likely the tree has been slowly destroyed? Well, first and foremost, the tree should be saved, and if this requires more subtle and regular pruning, then so be it. Let's be clear on this. The developers, through their contractors and careless action, created this outcome. They have to solve the problem to satisfy condition 16. The council has three choices if the tree does not survive. It can withdraw the DA approval, knowing a condition of the DA has been violated. It can have the tree removed and replaced and insist on a hoarding be erected to the same size and height until the tree grows to the same height and size as the hoarding. This decision and subsequent action being a clear signal. Actions of contractors are the responsibility of the developer, and developers must own the outcome. Or the third option is the council can roll over and approve the amendments. So what should the council do? There's plenty of evidence of developers taking unilateral action and then facing stern reaction from council. Let me remind everyone of the actions of the Subiaco Council. A developer started to demolish aged buildings in Hay Street, arguing they were unsafe. The council took swift and decisive action to save the aged commercial buildings in Hay Street, notwithstanding great inconvenience to businesses and traffic. So what do we have here? The developers are saying the tree is unsafe. Remove condition 16, then remove the tree, and we'll plant other trees elsewhere on the site. This tree does not have a safety problem. Every tree in the city of Perth is a safety problem if they are neglected. Some trees need more attention than others. Take, for example, the flame trees in Kings Park Road. These trees are notoriously brittle. The council ensures there is a regular pruning program to avoid falling branches. The tree in this development, if retained, will require more attention to encourage appropriate branch growth. And what caused this need? The savagery of the developer's arborist. This council must now make a decision on these amendments. The challenge for this council is whether it can focus on city-centric matters as well as matters in suburbia that have overwhelming community support and require developers to be held responsible for their actions and comply with approved DA conditions. The tree must be retained and the developers need to care and nurture the tree back to a healthy position. If the tree is deemed to be too far gone, a replacement lemon-scented tree be replanted in the same position after a hole with adequate depth and width is prepared, together with a hoarding the same size as the existing tree. The hoarding to remain in place until the tree reaches the current size. This obligation incentivises the developer to prepare the area for planting in a correct manner.
Thank you, Peter. We appreciate that, and I'm sorry that you were left off our list. I'll just get you to stay there in case any of our councillors have any questions for you. Councillor Fleeton.
Thanks, Mr. Oates. Hear the issues on the tree loud and clear, but on the fire tanks close to the setback, any comments there from your owners?
Well, we were concerned to the extent that they were going to be buried, and that would impact on the wall that's already there. And since we're at a higher level than the development, then we would be responsible in future years to maintain the integrity of that wall. So we are concerned about the way that's managed, and we'll be watching it extremely closely.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any further questions? Mr. Oates, so we heard there the suggestion that the existing on-site lemon gum tree be replaced with a mature 2,000 litre tree. We heard the type of tree, did we not?
It's a eucalypt.
do you have a view on that type of tree? If we were at that situation?
I haven't seen the tree in full bloom and what size it grows, but this is about respecting trees that are in situ.
Mm-hmm.
Council acknowledge that. And all I'm saying is that tree should survive if it can, or be replaced if necessary.
So not about the tree, but about the principle.
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
you know, the other councils surrounding us are doing that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from any other councillors? No? Mr. Oates, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate it. And again, sorry that we missed your spot on the rundown. We're going to move now, if there are no further deputations, which I don't believe there are, we're going to move to item 6 on the agenda, disclosures of interest. CEO, have any disclosures been received?
Yes, Lord Mayor, the Deputy Lord Mayor has declared an impartiality interest in item 18.2 as she is on the Board of Tourism WA. And I understand there is also you, Lord Mayor, have declared a financial interest in item 18.1 as Seven West Media are potentially involved in the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Angie, is this a disclosure of interest from the floor?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
In relation to 11.1, I remember when the matter came up before, I think the developer wasn't named in the papers that we had.
Okay.
But I think there was I'd met the developer before.
Okay.
So I'll follow
So you
up.
weren't aware then because,
Yeah, so
the developer wasn't named, but now
because
the
it wasn't
developer
named.
has
I
been
just
named.
remembered, so it has been named. So I was invited to a REWA breakfast, and the developer was president of REWA, I think,
Right,
at the
okay.
time. So I'll disclose that.
Is that just for noting or?
Yeah, just
Okay.
impartiality. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Fleeton from the floor?
Well, just explaining, I declared an interest when this matter was raised last year. I did have a financial interest because I worked for a firm that did work for one of the parties in the development. I'm no longer working for them.
Okay.
Got advice from the City Lord Mayor saying that I can take part in discussion and the vote. So that's why I'm taking part in this one, just for Councillor Leeser's benefit.
Thank you for the clarity, Councillor Fleeton. I'm not sure what the last bit meant, but thank you for the clarity anyway.
She's always liked me. I like it.
Okay, well, that's good. Keeping ourselves accountable, holding ourselves to account, as it should be. Are there any further disclosures of interest from the floor, anyone? Nope. Thank you. Item 7, confirmation of minutes. 8, questions by members, which due notice has been given. 9 is correspondence. 10 is petitions. Items 7 to 10 will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting next week. And we're moving on to reports. As we move through the reports, I will ask if any councillors have questions in relation to the items to hold those for next week. Is that what it says? What's that supposed to say? Right, okay. First of them is 11. Planning and Economic Development Alliance reports, 11.1. Mounts Bay Road, Crawley, proposed amendments to an approved 9-level residential development. We note that there were questions from Councillor Fleeton and Councillor Gordon. Councillors?
Yeah, thank you for the answers. So take them all as read. I've just got some follow-up if I can. I might go one at a time through to the GM if that's okay.
We'll go first through the CEO in the
Right.
first instance,
Sure.
and then from there, yeah.
So say an example where council doesn't agree to allow the tree to go, what actions would we be able to take if that tree wasn't then kept up to health?
CEO?
So if I could invite the General Manager Planning and Economic Development to answer any questions in relation to this item.
Thank you. Through you, Lord Mayor, I guess the options that are available to council are to either refuse the amendments to the planning application, which would then capture the request to amend condition 16. Alternatively, council could approve the amendments but not include the amendment to condition 16. Both those options would require the tree to stay. And if the development was then progressed with the tree in place and the tree was then removed, then we would be able to take compliance action for non-adherence to a planning condition.
And what would that look like?
Through you, Lord Mayor, there are penalties under the Planning and Development Act for non-compliance with a planning condition. Don't always move straight to prosecution. It may be that there is no choice to remove the tree at that particular stage. So then the city would work with the developer to make sure that a suitable replacement was established in its place. And if that was not done, then it would move through the compliance to a prosecution process.
Two more, Lord Mayor. One on the tree. So is it the city's opinion now that we're at that stage where the tree should go, given what's happened? We can't take back what the tree loppers did.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I think the city's technical officers are of the opinion that they agree with the arborist that was engaged that it is potentially a safety issue in future when the regrowth starts to grow. It would require a lot of maintenance and attention, but despite that, they are concerned that there might be a safety issue, so they do agree that we potentially, to be safe, the tree should be removed and replaced.
Okay. One last question on the fire tanks. Do we have any other examples where we've gone right to the boundary and allowed that type of infrastructure to sit right there? Is that normal?
Through you, Lord Mayor, fire tanks, not that I'm aware of for a development of this scale, but certainly it's not uncommon for structures to be placed on boundaries. Setbacks are usually required to prevent building bulk from imposing on neighbours visually or to result in loss of light and other amenity. In this case, given the structures are below the fence line and are going to or are proposed to be tailored so that they have that fourth dimension as viewed from above that is blended with the landscaping on site, it should not be an amenity issue. So it's not uncommon for structures generally to be located on the boundary if they don't provide an amenity issue for neighbours. Fire tanks specifically, I can't think of a recent example.
Thanks. And just for the city, Lord Mayor, do the deputations and do the public see these questions and the information that you give us? CEO?
Through to the manager. Governance.
It's included in the further information in the ordinary council meeting agenda. Yep.
Now, so we've got Councillor Gobbett, Councillor Angie, I've seen the hand, but Councillor Gordon firstly, there was a couple of questions here which have been answered. If there's anything further, no? Okay. Councillor Gobbett, if you'd like to demute yourself, away you go.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think in response to point 7 that was raised by Councillor Fleeton, the commentary from the city there describes that using aerial imagery, the value of the tree has been estimated at 107,000. What's the value of the replacement tree if we went down the path of that 2,000 litre tree?
Thanks, Councillor Gobbett. CEO to the GM.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I don't have the value of that tree at hand. I can certainly provide that information to elected members before next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thanks. I guess the point of that is follow-up question. Do we have any recourse if we went down the path of enforcing strictly the planning condition and then seeking the value of the difference in that amount?
CEO to the through the CEO to the GM.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I guess the value that we place on those trees and our ability to recoup that really just applies to trees in the public realm. It doesn't apply to trees on private property, so we'd not be able to recoup any of that value.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gobbett?
Thank you, that's all. Thanks.
Councillor Angie?
I'm just confirming that if there is to be a replacement tree, would it be in exactly the same location? Would we specify that?
Thank you. From the CEO across to the GM.
Through Lord Mayor, I do believe it's in the same location or thereabouts. It certainly isn't in a much different location. I can confirm that, but to my knowledge, it's in the same spot.
Yeah, if you could confirm that, because that seemed to be an important matter raised by the affected parties at the deputation this evening.
Thanks, GM. Thanks, Councillor Angie. Any further questions on that item? No? Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wondered, the original arborist who apparently did the heavy pruning that has caused this damage to the tree, do we go back to the original arborist to seek their opinion, or did we get a new arborist and seek an alternative opinion?
Okay. CEO to the GM.
Through you, Lord Mayor, the applicant sought an alternative or an alternate arborist to give us an opinion, but we have our own arborists that work with our technical staff, and so we relied on them to form our own opinion on this. It wasn't the arborist that was originally used.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors?
Lord Mayor, sorry, just to clarify in my mind, back to the first answer of the GM, I thought in reading the paper that the tree was damaged in the pruning and that caused the unsafe nature of it, and the pruning went too far and so we have to remove it. But in the answer that the GM gave, I got the impression that the advice is now that if it grows back, it's so big, it could drop limbs, it could be dangerous in the future. So that's why we're approving the removal. Could you please clarify that? I might be hearing it wrong.
Okay, so via the CEO to the GM for some clarity on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Lord Mayor. I guess our experts internally have the view that the lopping compromised all subsequent regrowth, and that retention of the tree would require extensive ongoing monitoring. Although the current regrowth appears healthy and shows that the tree is in decent health, as soon as the regrowth reaches a certain length and weight, it is likely to fail under high wind. So in terms of the advice we've got from our own internal people, it's as this tree starts to regrow, it could potentially be a safety risk.
Sorry. So there's nothing wrong with the tree now. It's in a future state where it gets too leafy.
GM?
Correct.
Yeah, DLM.
Is there any chance we could see these arborist reports? Because these trees are known as widow makers. They're known as trees that drop their limbs. So I don't find that particular. You know, I just wondered if we could get a look at the arborist report.
CEO to the GM.
Through you, Lord Mayor, we can provide the arborist report that was submitted to us with this application, and we can provide additional information from our technical staff.
Thank you very much.
Anything further from any councillors? No? Okay, thanks, General Manager. We're going to move to item 12. And 12.1 is the Events Plan 2022-2023. We note, firstly, a number of questions received with notice from Councillor Fleeton. I think there was 4. Councillor Gobbett, 2. We'll start with you, Councillor Fleeton. Anything further on those? Councillor Gobbett, was there anything further you sought or any clarity on your questions? No, thank you. Good use of the hand signal. Any councillors have any further questions on any of those items? No? Okay, thank you. We move to 13. There were no Infrastructure and Operations Alliance reports. 14 is Corporate Services Alliance reports. 14.1 monthly financial report, January 2022. Councillor Fleeton, firstly, a number of questions from you.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. They're fine. Just in the paper in its entirety, when the city can't provide details in this forum, can the city please follow up with a note to all elected members rather than just saying, sorry, we can't give it to you in this forum? It'd still be good to get the info.
Okay.
So legal advice, and then when specifics are mentioned around which property owners are in arrangements. Thank you.
CEO?
If I could just ask our Chief Finance Officer to comment as it relates to information around the rates, that would be helpful.
Thank you. Through the Chair. Specifically in relation to the rates questions, that information is available, but it certainly would not come through in this format because, as we heard earlier, that then ends up as further information in the public domain, and it's not appropriate to provide details of people's individual financial circumstances in a public forum. But happy to take that one offline, Councillor, and find a way to address that with you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any further questions on that item? No. 14.2 is Schedule of Accounts paid January 2022. Councillor Fleeton, need any clarity on yours?
No, just the same issue. We get the response that it's legally privileged and they can't tell us. That's fine in this forum, but ratepayers are now spending over 1.5 million a year in legal fees. I'd like to get some clarity on when we're going out to seek external advice.
Thank you. I'll talk with General Counsel. She actually makes those decisions, but again, if you want to speak specifically, she is available and will enable that to occur. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO. Any further questions from any councillors? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. On page 149, why do we pay LinkedIn $28,048.90?
CEO.
Can I take that on notice? I'm assuming it's a membership, but I will take that on notice and provide next meeting.
Similar question that might need to be taken on notice. Why do we pay $3,546.24 for a New York Times subscription? It's page 164.
And if we do, who gets it? Although Wordle is now owned by New York Times.
Wordle's free.
Yeah, that's a good point. CEO?
So is LinkedIn.
Good question, and we'll follow up on that. And the second part of the question, we'll find out who actually does read it.
Yeah, or who gets it? Yeah, gets it. Or is it a digital subscription, which might be available to everybody?
What the New York Times?
Any further questions on 14.2? No? Okay, thanks everyone. 14.3, is it 14.3? 15 rather. 15 is Chief Executive Officer Reports. 15.1 is the new Council Policy 1.8 Code of Conduct, Behavioural Complaints Management. Councillor Gooden, I know there was a couple of questions received with notice. Nothing further. Councillors, any questions on this item, item 15.1? Thank you. 16 is committee reports. Following the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held yesterday, items referred from the committee to council will be included in the agenda for next week's ordinary council meeting. 17, item 17, motions of which notice have been given will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting also next week. And 18, matters for which the meeting may be closed. Items 18.1, 18.2 and 18.3 are designated confidential in accordance with sections 5.232 of the Local Government Act 1995. If any elected member has any questions on the confidential items or attachments, we will need to close the session to the public. Do we want to go through these one by one, or do we want to? So does anybody have any questions on 18.1, 18.2 or 18.3? Yes? Okay, so with that, we will close the chamber. I'll ask everybody to depart the chamber if I could, and request that live stream, except to Councillor Gobbett, be paused, and then we'll proceed to the relevant item.
I seriously thought you'd left the baby in a cupboard.
Oh, okay. Right. Item 19 is urgent business. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting. So there being no further business, I'll now declare the agenda briefing session closed at 5:54 p.m. and remind those that are on the invite list that dinner is served on the 11th floor. Thanks, everybody.